Welcome to the Church Safety and Security broadcast with the Church Safety Guys, sponsored by Checkr, background screens for your faith or volunteer organization. The Church Safety Guys is a nonprofit organization. Our mission is to inspire, influence, and impact church safety and security teams. We are protectors, guardians, ambassadors, and shepherds. We are about all things church safety and security, which starts with a ministry mindset and a servant's heart. Join us for the next hour as the Church Safety Guys unpack safety, security, leadership, and ministry operations with your hosts, James McGarvey, Paul Buckner, and Mike Scully. This broadcast is also available on social media, YouTube, your favorite podcast platforms, and on the all-new Church Security app.
Well, good evening. Welcome to the Church Safety and Security broadcast. I am your host, one of your hosts, James, and I am joined tonight by none other than Paul and Mike, who are both exhausted after flying back to their prospective home. Their prospective home,
absolutely,
home places, etc. And we're grateful that they made it back last week instead of this week with all of the air traffic funness, right?
1,000 flights I heard today were canceled. 1,000. That's craziness. So yeah, it's good to be able to say we got back. But yeah, right. It's been an exhausting week. I'm still kind of trying to catch up.
I don't know what you're talking about. Exhausting. What?
Yeah, right. And I'm broadcasting live from a hotel, so I don't have my normal setup here.
I can't keep up with your jet set lifestyle, Mike.
I know, right?
So if you're just joining us, or you're joining us at a later time, feel free to like and share with your church, your team. And at a later time, you can click that lower right-hand link to subscribe to our channel on YouTube, or you can listen to us on Spotify or Iheart Media. And you can always visit or listen to us on the Church Security app or at churchsafetyguys.com. So I do want to throw out a disclosure that we have been, for those of you that are listening, we introduced at the conference, which the conference was amazing. I just want to say, for everyone, thank you. If you came out to that, we definitely appreciate meeting you guys, and it was fun. We had folks come out from North Carolina, Indiana, Michigan, Kentucky, and I feel like and Virginia, and then of course Ohio. So it was a great time. It was a great day of fellowship. I don't think it could have honestly gone any better. We are still working on putting together the video series for it. So as soon as we get the videos together and edited, we will have that available for those of you that are interested. But honestly, this week has been crazy for all three of us trying to get back into the scheme of things. And one of the big things that we introduced at the conference was the new Church Safety and Security program in conjunction with Centurion Bible College. And what was crazy about that is that I have talked several times this week with Dr. Brady Stevens, and we've been going back and forth, and we've been talking about different things, and we both have been slammed, and we've been slammed by folks asking for information, which is a good thing, right? I mean, my email inbox is full of information requests because people are so interested in the program. So from that standpoint, please if you did email the college, or maybe you emailed us and said, hey, could you send me some more information? Just be patient with us if you could. Dr. Stevens is actually starting a new job with the state of West Virginia. And so he's been trying to navigate that. And then
Nice.
I've just been busy with my job as well, trying to get back in the swing of things and get caught up with some of our emails. So don't hate me if we don't respond right away. So we're going to get back to you as soon as we can. But yeah, that's pretty much. I think that's pretty much been my last week in a nutshell.
It's crazy it took so long, but at the same point, it feels like the three of us were together yesterday. Like, that's how crazy it's been. So
it's surreal because it was outside of what we normally do. And so some of you guys will know that we'd only met physically one other time. And since we're guys, we didn't think about taking pictures with each other. So there was no photographic evidence of us being together. And we had this amazing time. So this time we made sure we brought in some professional photographic help and got some good pictures of us together. But it was really amazing for me because, and it's kind of surreal because, I've been recognized a couple times on the street. I'm not a celebrity. Our guest tonight could fall into that category, but I'm not a celebrity. And having people come up and quote things that I've said or talk about episodes we've done, that was pretty surreal. And hearing people say what you do has blessed me and helped my church, that's what makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, I mean, we were able to meet folks that we've never. We've only talked to, and then we made new friends too, right? We've had a couple of churches since reach out and have been grateful, and we're still getting the surveys, or we were still getting the surveys in, and I think all of the surveys that we got back in, people were saying, "Hey, you're going to do this every year, right? So next year it's going to be a regular thing." Yeah, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go take some, I don't know, smelling salts over here. And
the theme song for next year's
we'll
event, Under Pressure.
I tell you, one of the most surreal things for me, I think, was, signing an autograph. Signing the book. Yeah. I'm like when it first, it happened multiple times, but I'm sitting there saying when it first happened, I literally paused for a second. I'm like, wait, what? And I thought I was in some alternate reality, and I'm like, no, I did. I am in a book now, so you know what? I guess it comes with the territory.
Somebody, I forget who it was, somebody came up to me and they're like, and it was the Inspire, Influence, Impact book, and they're like, James, could you sign this? And I'm like, okay. So I'm signing it, and I stopped it for a second, and he's like, what's wrong? And I said, well, actually, Mike's standing right over there. If you want to grab him real quick. And he's like, oh, that's where I'm going next. So he shoots over to you. But it was great. I really appreciated it. I think it was a great experience, great day, and a lot of hard work, a lot of fun. I'm just going to be honest. I don't know next year what we're going to do and I don't think we know what we're going to do. Not because we couldn't plan it, but for the sake of, right now we're already looking at 2 or 3 other conferences, and like we mentioned at the conference the first time, that we all work full time. So when we do this on the side, it's kind of like, do I have enough vacation time to stretch out from? and usually that's a family conversation where my wife reminds me, no, you don't have vacation time. we still want to actually take a break. And I'm like, what's that about? I don't know.
Exactly. So, and I know we'll unpack more. We'll unpack more of this at another time. But I also just wanted to throw the quick comment that it was great because the three of us all had a chance to attend your church on Sunday following the conference, which was a total different, I think, mindset. I mean, we all have to put on the hats that we wear when we're in our own churches. I think it was unique to be able to be together, thinking through the lens, through all of the training that each of us have had, through all the conversations and stuff that we've had, and really just think through that lens in your facility, in your church. And so it just added a whole nother level of kind of excitement, I guess, to the weekend.
Well, and it was fun because we got to hang out a little bit after church and have some fun together. But I do think it was kind of, and I'm still waiting for the critique from the two of you. At some point, I'm expecting to get on my home church because I'm like, okay, so when are you going to send me the note saying, okay, you need to improve on A, B, and C? But it was kind of funny because everybody knew you guys. So like when we were all at the church, they would walk up and be like, oh, you're the church safety guys that hang out with this guy.
And most of them apologized to us
Yeah.
for James, so which felt good. So,
But yeah, okay. So without further ado, I'm going to bring our guest in.
awesome.
But anyhow, we're going to be joined tonight by Gary Quisenberry, and he's a former U.S. Air Marshal and veteran. So I'll bring him in. So thank you for joining us tonight, Gary. Thanks for putting up with our craziness to hang out.
Hey, it's nothing but entertaining. And before we start, I just wanted to say that you guys are doing phenomenal work, and just
Thanks.
Keep that up, because the world needs more of that. And thank you guys so much for having me on.
I'm honored, honestly. I think I actually found some of your stuff, and I have one of your books here with me.
Yeah.
But I found some of your stuff through Colonel Grossman, because I know that he's been a guest on the show, and I was looking up some of his stuff on Amazon, and your name popped up with your book, and I'm like, hey, this is an interesting topic.
Yeah. Dave Grossman is a fantastic guy. He actually wrote the foreword for that first book. So, and for me, coming up in law enforcement, you read those guys, like Dave Grossman is just a staple on reading across military and law enforcement cultures across the world. And to reach out to him just on a whim, I met him in the hallway at the NRA show in Dallas one year. And we spoke for just a moment. He gave me his card and said, you need anything, give me a call. And I called him, asked if he'd be interested. And sure enough, I got a forward by Dave Grossman. And that lent a lot of weight and credibility to what it was I was doing. So very blessed.
Absolutely.
It's one of those rising tide lifts all boats things. We have had the pleasure of, I think all of us have met Colonel Grossman. I call him the venerable Dave Grossman, and I quote him. So I chaplain as a civilian, I chaplain police departments. And I commonly quote him when somebody says something to the effect of, I had this euphoria after this fight and I almost died. And what's wrong with me? Well, that's called an adrenaline dump. And then we go into what Dave teaches, Colonel Grossman teaches. And so what he teaches has blessed people, as you said, across military and law enforcement boundaries. And a lot of people have experienced terrible things. And once they can gain the perspective of, oh, that's normal, that's what happens after you go through something like this, then you stop beating on yourself and go, okay, so now how do I come back from this?
Exactly. There's a really big divide between the reality of violence and what you see on television or you read about in the latest thrillers. It's there's a lot that people in our world that you just don't discuss because you think that it make you look less, macho or whatever. But you're gonna experience feelings and physiological reactions to stress and violence that you didn't expect. And that's one of the things that Dave Grossman does better than anybody else is shine a light on that stuff, and make it something that you can base a discussion around, kind of mentor some of the newer people coming up in the fact that, you're not Superman and you're going to need to know this stuff so that when it does happen to you, you don't think you're broken. You're working correctly. You just got to learn to work through it to get to the other side.
So before we go on quickly, I want to touch on that. Anybody who has a friend in law enforcement, has a friend who's been in the military, especially that's been downrange, they've been overseas and deployed, they need to read Grossman. And he's on audio now. You can get him on Kindle. And I literally was telling one of the stories from Grossman's, my two favorite books of his, On Killing and On Combat, in a room full of cops. And I was sharing about experiences that people go through. And this officer stopped me and he goes, say that last part again. And I did. And he goes, that explains what happened to me. And he said, I was fighting for my life over a knife. And he said, partway through the altercation, he said he now realizes that his body was all in, time to pull the goalies. And he defecated his pants as his body literally loosened everything up to recommit to that fight. And he said, I was so embarrassed and basically until this moment when we were having that conversation to understand he thought something was wrong with him. He was less of a man because in that moment, at that point, losing a knife fight, he thought that he was going to die, and his body was like, pull the goalies, we're all in, we're not going to leave anything behind. And of course he survived the fight and the bad guy went to jail. But it's moments like that is where the rubber meets the road, and it's real and it's visceral, and it's maybe not dinner table conversation, but it happens. So.
Right.
For sure. So actually, we'll jump right into it. Gary, can you just kind of walk us through? I know, and I'm gonna pull up your book here again. So, Spotting Danger Before It Spots You, and
Yes.
if I can get it on the camera so everybody can see.
I've got one too. There you go.
Okay, there we go. So you did a great job. I think in the first couple of portions of that book, I think you did a great job in making it more understanding and personable, and not like at a really high level. Like, you kind of started us through your career and saying, this is what kind of got me interested in this type of thing, and this is why I became interested and realized I needed to get this message out. So for our folks that haven't picked up a copy of that, can you kind of just walk us through like your background and how your career kind of aided in that topic?
Sure, absolutely. So, I was born in Carroll County, Virginia, and not a lot of options in Carroll County. So when I turned 18 years old, well, actually when I was 17 years old, I joined the Army. I served several years in the Army, veteran of Operation Desert Storm, like you mentioned. I got out and I started working for the government. I started off in the Bureau of Prisons in Beckley, West Virginia.
Wow. Okay.
Got promoted to lieutenant and was over the SORT team in Atwater, California, assistant SORT leader in Atwater, California. And then 9/11 hit. So, like a lot of different people, you get that wave of patriotism, and people, sought ways to help in any way they could. That's the most united I think we've been as a country in a long time, which is sad to say. But, I chose to take the path of the Federal Air Marshal. So I dropped my application as soon as they started taking them. And, early in 2002, I started working for the Federal Air Marshal Service in the Las Vegas field office. And I went from Las Vegas to, I was one of the primary instructors for the academy in Atlantic City, New Jersey, for new air marshals coming in. I was a lead firearms instructor there for 3 years. Then I went as a supervisor to Cleveland in Ohio, still flew a little bit, but I missed that part of the job, like sitting on the plane, doing the job, feeling productive in that sense, like I'm giving something back. So in the last 6 years of my career, I decided to leave the supervisory position and go back to flying out of the Philadelphia field office. And I flew out of the Philadelphia field office, mostly international missions, for the last 6 years. And I just retired today, as a matter of fact, October the 10th, 1 year ago. So I've been in retirement now for 1 year. Well, that's my background in a nutshell. So it's all been, your military or government service of some sort.
For sure. So
you've maybe handled a firearm at some point. People might have filmed you handling a firearm at some point.
Yeah. So I was, like I said, I was a lead firearms instructor for the Federal Air Marshal Service, and I'm a decent shot. Not to toot my own horn or anything, but I'm okay. And a friend of mine was on this new television show that was coming out on the History Channel. His name's JJ Racaza, and he was on a television show called Top Shot. And he kept telling me, hey, man, you ought to put in for this. Like, you got the personality, you got the skill sets, like they'd really love you on this. And I'm like, nah, I'm not going to do that. So season 2 came around. I watched him on season 1, and he finished 3rd and did a phenomenal job, really represented the Federal Air Marshal Service very well. Even though at the time we couldn't say that we were Federal Air Marshals on television. We had to make up, things. One guy said he was an accountant, mine's a federal agent or whatever. Awesome. But anyway, I ended up breaking down. I put my application in for that show on season 3. And then I did very well on season 3. I was a fairly popular, contestant on there. So they invited me back for the All-Star season. And then again on the All-Star season, I didn't win, but I finished 3rd again. So I'm kind of locked into that 3rd place position when it comes to Top Shot. But that's where a lot of people, when they see me, they recognize me from. So,
sure. We were talking before the show started. We were talking about protecting our families and that stereotype of cleaning a firearm when your kid's date shows up. So
yeah.
I don't have the claim to fame of I was on Top Shot, but
Yeah, I'll never forget one time a kid come to pick my daughter up. And they were going to go to the movies. He's a good kid, and I try not to give him too hard of a time if they're good kids,
Right.
Copy. Exactly.
Parents and everything. So he comes over and he wanted to take my daughter to the movies, and I'm like, so which movie theater are you going to? And he tells me, I'm like, how far away is that? He goes, it's only a mile down the road. It's a mile. It's just right there. I'm like, okay, I'm just checking. I'm like, I got a rifle. I could hit you from there, right? He's like, oh, I know. I'm like, all right, have fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm not going to go into my story for sake of time, but yeah, we
every father has it.
Yeah. Fun thing. Suffice it to say, there's enough people in my church that are like, don't mess with him. He's the security director. Have you seen him shoot?
Yeah.
I'm never going to apply for Top Shot or anything like that. So, but one of these days I will get to shoot with Paul, and I'll be happy if maybe I come close to out shooting him.
Well, I actually built my own range out here on my property. So if you ever make it down to the southern part of Virginia, the Blue Ridge Mountains, you come see me.
You know what?
Come down to get smoked.
You're like, yeah. He's like, oh, I already shot. I've put my gun away. I've cleaned it and everything, and I'm like loading the magazine.
I'm getting older. I'm slowing down.
So what was it like? I'm just curious. So starting a new program like that, and this is kind of more your career than the topic, but you were one of the first air marshals in the program.
Well, no, not really. I mean, the post 9/11 program. So one thing that a lot of people don't know is that the Federal Air Marshal Service has been around since 1966.
Okay.
And, yeah, it was started by John F. Kennedy, and it was the Sky Marshal program. And they used a lot of augmentees from other agencies because of the frequent hijackings where people would hijack a plane and like take me to Cuba kind of thing. Sure. So, and back then it was, unheard of for, like violence to erupt on those flights or for those airplanes. They were used as transportation from point A to point B, or to get money, or to free hostages, or whatever their political purposes were. But nobody had ever thought to use, an airplane as a weapon of mass destruction. So, there were air marshals prior to 9/11. There were actually 33 Federal Air Marshals. That's it. And then after 9/11, those numbers bumped up, very quickly and considerably so. And to this day, I couldn't even tell you what the numbers are, but they never even shared that with us.
That's probably best. Yeah.
So, it's a necessary job, and I feel bad. I got out at just the right time. I came back from a flight from Amsterdam, and my boss called me. He's like, hey man, this COVID thing's weird. They told me to tell you to stay home for 2 weeks. I'm like, all right, no problem. I'll catch up on some yard work, And then next thing you know, I wasn't flying for almost 3 months. And by the time we did go back, it was very limited. The planes were almost empty. It was, and that's when I dropped my retirement packet. So, and now with stuff that they're dealing with on the planes, just people losing their minds over delays and, cancellations in the mask policies or whatever. It's, it's getting to be a crazy job. So,
for sure, yeah. I've read a lot of different incidents like that over the last couple of months. So I certainly don't envy law enforcement in general right now because of the culture, but in an enclosed environment like that where you don't have a lot of options.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where the situational awareness piece comes into place. And, that's really what led to the books was, when I got out, just before I retired, I actually just started making a bunch of notes. I was going to teach a firearms class for a group in Kentucky. And I always talk about situational awareness because I feel like that is a key component to your personal defenses. And it's one that's very, very commonly overlooked. So I started writing these notes for this class. And as I looked at it, I'm looking at my outline, and I realized, I'm like, this kind of looks like a table of contents. So I would set on flights and I would just kind of flesh these out, in my little notebook.
Nice.
When I got home. And by the time it was over, I had about 70,000 words, on this. And I'm like, man, I'm going to try to submit this like a manuscript. So I cleaned it up a little bit, sent it off. And then I heard back from a publishing company, YMAA Publications. And, with that initial manuscript, it was kind of all encompassing when it comes to self-defense, everything from communication skills, situational awareness, to intermediate weapons, all the way up to firearms. And they came back and they were like, they actually use the words, you tell people not to get easily discouraged. They actually use the words unfit to publish when they came back.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah, it was a fault in the gut. But they also came back with a lot of suggestions, and they're like, we're really interested in the situational awareness piece because they publish primarily self-defense books. And it's not something that they really dove into. So they're like, could you trim this down? Just focus on the situational awareness piece. Send us another manuscript. So I did. I canned the whole thing other than about 5,000 or 10,000 words, and then fleshed it out again, sent it back to them, and they were like, "Yeah, we want to do this, but we want it to be a series." So I actually signed a contract with YMAA Publications to do a 4-book series. Now the first book, the one that you showed earlier, that's Spotting Danger Before It Spots You. That's the first book in the series, and that's the kind of nuts and bolts of situational awareness for everybody. And like you said earlier, I didn't write that specifically for military and law enforcement people. There's plenty of those books out there. I wanted this book to be for people that understood the need for it, but didn't exactly know how to go about implementing it into their lifestyle.
I love it.
And then the further you go down that rabbit hole, with just common folks that want to learn this stuff, then you start thinking about, well, what about people that have kids? They have these other concerns that affect their ability to defend themselves. So the second book in the series is Spotting Danger Before It Spots Your Kids. And that one is for parents who have children like between the ages of 4 and 12. And it's not teaching children situational awareness per se. It's because you can't set a 6-year-old down and say, let's talk about situational awareness. You're never going to do that,
Right.
But you can sit down and you can play little games that develop skill sets in your child, like their memory, their ability to use descriptive language, their ability to plan and use critical thinking. Those kind of things you can develop in a child. The third book in the series is going to be for teens, and that one is written specifically for teenagers or parents of teens. And then the fourth one is going to be kind of my wheelhouse as a Federal Air Marshal, and that's going to be for travelers.
Ooh,
that's the 4 books in the what I call the Heads Up series.
So I want to go back to go forward because some of what you talked about. Number one, I would love to get paid to fly and write a book. That would be amazing. But they would definitely tell me that it was. Yeah, they would tell me it was unfit to publish as well.
Yeah.
And for those of you at home, you need to go grab these books because as they come out, because think about this: a military background, a law enforcement background, a firearms instructor background, an air marshal background, and that includes entangled fighting. We were talking about that before we started the broadcast. There's a wealth of information there that not just everyone has. And when you're dealing with people from other cultures, and this is something that Gary is experienced with, not every culture acts the same way. So social norms are different. And if you're traveling, social norms are going to be different. You're going on a missions trip. You're taking your family down to Costa Rica for the fun of it. And in those other environments, you have to find what's the norm. And if you can find the normal within that environment. So watch these books as they come out, because this could save your life in an environment that if you're not keeping your head on a swivel and looking for what the normal environment is, you could find yourself in a world of hurt very quickly. And then, James, I think I walked on you. We have a large immigrant population in my area, and I was riding with an officer Saturday, and 2 young boys came out the door about 12, 13 years old, and their culture is taught to hate cops. They're not from the United States, and they're taught to hate law enforcement. And they came out the door, spotted the officer driving through the neighborhood responding to a call, and they were lugging something in a tub, and they bolted back inside and shut the door, and we're seeing curtains peeking. And within moments, this entire neighborhood is watching the officer drive up to the call. That's more like a third or fourth world country or a really bad inner city. And those are things like that. When you're spotting those norms, I looked at him and I said, do you want me out of the vehicle to kind of watch your back? And he's like, you think? And we walked up to the door, and he's knocking on the door. There's an open line on a 911 call. He's got to check it out. It was nothing. But that was an eye-opener for me, just one level deeper for me. And I want to dovetail that with your book you're talking about with traveling. Is if I was oblivious, I wouldn't have picked up on any of those things. Their whole normal reversed. The minute we pulled into that neighborhood, everybody was off the street. If I was in a third world country in the military, I'd think we were about to get ambushed.
Yeah. In the book, like I describe these as baseline behaviors. So every situation, every circumstance has a baseline, and those are the actions that are considered normal in those circumstances. So a church has baseline behaviors. You know how people are expected to dress, how they're expected to act, right? And how they treat each other in that setting. You go to Miami Beach in July, completely different baseline behaviors. You go to Tel Aviv on a 14-hour flight across the Atlantic, completely different baseline. I know we had a lot of people in the beginning, because 9/11 was so fresh in everybody's mind that everybody's looking for the next group of terrorists on the plane, and they're sitting there just being hyper vigilant. And the least little thing that caught their attention that was outside of what they considered to be the normal, the baseline behaviors, they overreacted to it. So, you get a group of, say, 5 or 6 military-age males, Middle Eastern males, going to Tel Aviv, and at a certain point during the flight, they all stand up and move to different parts of the plane and get on their knees and start praying. It's a completely normal behavior on those flights. That's their culture. It's their time of prayer. But for someone who had never experienced that, and they see that, and they still have that 9/11 thing fresh in their head, they're used to maybe flights from, Denver to LA. Denver to LA is completely different than, Philadelphia to Tel Aviv. Even flights, have their own baseline behaviors. How many of you guys ever flown to Vegas?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. That was my first field office. So, all the, Vegas, baby, on the flight and stuff, I got so tired of hearing that 5 years of my career. Like if somebody says that one more time, I'm going to put them in cuffs. But that's their baseline behavior. That's normal. Now, for situational awareness to work, you have to understand those baselines so that when something does step outside of that and catch your attention, those what I call baseline anomalies, those are the things that draw your attention, that takes closer consideration as to how they're going to affect your personal safety, so that you can build those plans around how you would respond if something were to go south.
For sure. We got to take a quick break, but I definitely want to jump in there because there's some stuff that you said that I want to come back to. So yeah. Don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back with you in just a second.
Nobody thinks it will happen to them, but with over 2,000 emergency phone calls per month to our independent program attorney answered hotline, it's closer to home than you think. At US Law Shield, we give you exclusive access to our 24/7, 365 emergency hotline, not a call center, direct access to our network of independent program attorneys. With a price point of only $10.95 per month and unlimited attorney hours for criminal and civil defense, US Law Shield provides you with unparalleled service and protection where it matters most. No other program comes close. We believe an educated member is an empowered member. We do this by providing educational resources featuring seasoned attorneys, firearms instructors, law enforcement, and experts in all areas of self-defense law. We at US Law Shield believe peace of mind should come with simple and affordable protection.
With over 50 years of experience with religious and nonprofit organizations, Thomas Alexander Insurance and Associates understands that your congregation is different from a traditional business. We're here to fulfill your needs, coming to you while creating a personal plan for your budget and size. From your local community to around the globe, we are advocates for you. Thomas Alexander Insurance and Associates, your partner in service.
What if there was a program so uniquely structured that it would help you protect your congregation and, at the same time, help you develop best practices to grow your ministry and be impactful in your community? What if there was a biblical resource that would offer thousands of hours of training and experience to guide you in keeping your ministry safe and secure and being prepared for the unexpected? What if you could have the collective instruction from public safety and security experts from all over the world at your disposal to help you with a biblical view of safety and security? Impossible, you say? Unlikely? It would be unheard of for someone to create something like that. We just did. Introducing the new biblically based one-year certificate and associate's degree program in church safety and security. Developed by the Church Safety Guys and Centurion Bible College, this program is designed to give you the best of everything possible. Learn on your schedule, at your convenience, with experienced industry leaders, and receive college credit for it. Enhance your learning on protecting your ministry and community today. For more information, visit centurionbc.org or churchsafetyguys.com. Enroll to begin your path of biblical education and learning today.
The Church Safety Guys help church and place of worship safety and security teams all over North America through our broadcasts, online communities, conferences, trainings, resources, and the all-new Church Security app. Download it today. Help us continue to reach churches by supporting our sponsors, purchasing our resources, and consider becoming a ministry partner by making a monthly or one-time donation. Remember to like, subscribe, and share this broadcast with your team. And now, back to the broadcast.
Okay, we're back with Gary Quisenberry, former veteran and Federal Air Marshal. So I just want to jump back into it. One of the reasons that I like the book so much, and the guys will tell you one of my favorite books, and probably one of the books I recommend the most as we deal with church safety and security teams, is Left of Bang by Patrick Van Horn. Yeah. And I think I've read that book numerous times, and I've tried to share principles from that as far as looking at the norm, the norm for your church, the norm for your environment. And I picked up a copy of Spotting Danger Before It Spots You. And what I thought was awesome about it was, when I first started reading it, in my mind, I was thinking, I wonder if I could give this to my kids and have them read it. And then I'm like, well, I wouldn't necessarily give them Left at Bang. It's kind of it's a deep book. Like, I've had to read it several times. But what I thought was interesting was you put little activities in there to like read this. We'll come back to it, at the end of the chapter. And then you're like, oh, junk. Like, I read it and I'm like, junk, what am I supposed to remember? I got to go back. And so right. It was non-condescending, but different activities that kind of to help you think outside of the norm and kind of stretch your mind to be engaged and to think about assessing things and thinking through things different. But one of the interesting things is, and I mentioned this to the guys a couple of weeks ago, at our church, we look for red flags, and we look for one of the things that a lot of times catches our attention is bags, and people bringing in like an overstuffed backpack or something of that nature. And so we went out, a friend of mine and I went out to do executive protection at a Bible college in Ohio for a musician and comedian. And what was interesting is when we started talking, one of the things that came up was, well, hey, what about all the bags? What about the backpacks? How are we going to handle that? And it was interesting because I had just gotten your book and I had started reading it, and I'm like, well, wait a second. In our environment where we're used to, that's unusual. But when we go to a college where everybody's walking around with a backpack, that's a norm, right? So it was just kind of interesting. And it was that, for me, it was that quick to be able to apply it and say, look, what are some of the norms right here, right now for this college? Just to kind of reiterate what you had said earlier, as far as, kind of evaluating threats and with the planes. my wife recently, because of her job, well, it's changed a bit because of COVID, but before COVID, she was flying international flights all the time. And I've flown an international flight one time into, I think it was Amsterdam. But I'd never heard what you just said. So yeah, I would be one of the individuals that if I was sitting on a plane, I work with a lot of folks that are Muslim or maybe have that prayer, where they stop what they're doing and they go pray. But I would probably still be one of the individuals, having been involved with 9/11, that would be like, wait a second, I need to understand what's going on, or this is going to be a big, this is going to raise a big concern or big flag to me.
Right.
So I appreciate you mentioning that for sure.
Yeah, it's an important part of the process, and unfortunately, that's how we come across the ugly American moniker, that we get when we go overseas, because a lot of people don't take the time to understand normal behaviors, baseline behaviors in different cultures, because everything changes once you go overseas. Someone's idea of personal space is much different in, say, an Asian country than it is here in the United States. The simple things like just forming a line, when you're standing at a ticket counter or something. Other cultures, some of them have no concept of what that is. Like if they can get to the front, they're going to the front because that's where you get the ticket. I don't care how many people are in line. And that's why you see a lot of chaotic scenes around buses and trains and stuff, when you're watching videos of places like China and India, these densely populated, cultures. But, we have to take it upon ourselves to learn what those normal behaviors are, and then move past our own personal preferences to kind of accept that and make it part of who we are when we're in those areas, because that's really the only way to kind of immerse yourself in it so that you can spot those baseline anomalies. Because if you don't understand what a threat looks like in different places, then everything looks like a threat. And you can't manage your, say you go on a vacation overseas, you don't want to spend your whole vacation worried about, security and, is this person following me? Or, all these different things. And some of that stuff is just culturally normal. And once you learn to differentiate that, it makes the process of implementing situational awareness a lot easier. That's why in the book, I break the whole process of learning situational awareness down into 3 different phases. First, you have to understand the threat. You have to know what the threat is and what it looks like. And then you have to kind of put away those preconceived notions of what you think, danger, what direction you think danger may come from. After that, you've got to build your situational awareness. That's that nuts and bolts piece that I talked about, where you get into things like, the different levels of situational awareness and what they mean, as in terms of your physiological reactions to stress or violence. And then after that, once you understand those things, then you can start building your personal defenses. Because all too often people will think, well, I want to defend myself, so I'm going to take a jiu-jitsu class, or I'm going to run out and get my concealed carry permit and carry a gun. I don't care what martial art or how proficient you are with a firearm. I don't care about any of that. And I say it very clearly in the book, you can't effectively fight what you don't see coming. So that situational awareness piece is so important, but because it's so simple, it's also very easily overlooked. So, and that's why, I wrote the book the way I wrote it. I try to make it approachable to everybody, where, you don't have to have a military or a law enforcement. I stayed away from certain acronyms or, certain terms and stuff to make it more, just kind of just easy reading for common folks, and that they could walk away from. And that's what really, really makes it all worthwhile to me, is when I talk to somebody and they're like, I read that book and I started doing this, and then I noticed that, and it, it stopped this. So, people start seeing the results of it immediately after they learn to implement this program.
And that's honestly, I'll mention something and then I'll throw it over to Mike. But yeah, one of the things in application in churches, we have two church services at our church. And a lot of times what I will do, and people think that I'm just walking through and greeting folks between services, which I am greeting folks. But, as I walk through, as people are funneling into our main auditorium, one of the things that I look for is that, like, what's normal, what's not normal. if I smile at someone, will I get a smile back? Is somebody sweating? Are they,
Right.
are they addressed? Are they looking at something else? And we had a call. An individual called us today, a staff member, and said, "Hey, there's a person sitting here, and they're sweating profusely. They came in with a t-shirt. They were hunched over. They were rocking back and forth, just very unusual characteristics." And they said, "Hey, can you kind of keep an eye on this individual?" And when I went and saw him and looked at him, I said, "You know what? He actually, I'm not making excuses. We'll watch, we'll kind of watch stuff, but he sweats a lot. Like, that's just how, I don't know if he's on a medication or something,
Right.
that does that. But and that for that, I mean, in that situation, that kind of took some of the stress out of that, because they were like, oh my goodness, what's going on with this person? And I'm like, that's because I've seen him multiple days. That's pretty much normal. And for him, and I know that's normal. So I'm okay with that. But
Yeah.
Mike, I was going to throw it to you.
Yeah, a couple of things. Piggyback off that, James, is talking to our teams about the different services. Is you have a service that has kids' church. That's going to bring out a different crowd than a service that doesn't. And then you have a PM service. We have a much younger crowd that attends that, and no kids and no families. So you can see the shift and change or to your point, Gary, the baseline is shifting between even services. And
Right.
so it's a matter of teaching our team members to kind of say, understand the service you're working, because your baseline is changing depending on the service that is.
Right.
And then I think another good piece is wanted to pick up on and circle back to is the mention of the flights and different pieces and the different cultures and the different behaviors, not just from a situational awareness, but from a self-awareness. Because I think if we marry that to our friend John Riley, we sit there and say there can be behaviors that we could do in a foreign land that by nature escalate a situation unknowingly. So we have to not just be aware of what's occurring around us, we have to be aware of what we're doing so that we don't unnaturally cause a scene or cause repercussions to then blow back or reflect on our team, on our mission, whatever we might be.
Absolutely. So when it comes to predatory violence, there are two types of predators. There's a resource predator and a process predator. So a resource predator is someone who's looking for something of value that you may have, be it an expensive laptop case or a watch. A process predator, they're very different, and they're much more dangerous because they don't care what you have on you. They are in it for the act of violence itself. So that's one thing that people need to know, that there are two separate types of predators, and they have very different end goals in mind. Both of those end up with you being hurt, though. So they have that in common. Now, what I tell everybody is, once you understand what predators look for, you have to, in the book, I'll walk you through the process of conducting a self-assessment, because like you said, you have little baseline behaviors that can make you look like either a hard target or a soft target. I'll break those down in the book as well. So back in 1981, there were two sociologists. Their names were Grayson and Stein. They did this study, and I found it very interesting. So I put it in the book. And what they did was they took video cameras and they set them up in Times Square, and they filmed people just walking by, doing things that they do in the natural course of their day. And they did that for an entire day. And they took that video footage to a local prison, and they showed it to a group of inmates. And all these inmates were violent offenders, murderers, rapists. They were these resource and process predators. They were predatory criminals. And they asked them to evaluate the people that they saw in the videos, pick the ones that they would target, to hurt for whatever reason, and then explain why. And without fail, they all picked the same people. And they gave them a point system to rate everybody. So like a 1 through 3 was a soft target, somebody that they felt like they could easily approach, easily take advantage of, get whatever they wanted to from them, and then go about their business with little or no risk to them. Because believe it or not, they are very, they're concerned about that. They're concerned about their own safety. They don't want to get caught. They don't want to get hurt. Right. The other people that they rated between 7 and 10 were people that they considered to be hard targets. Maybe they look like they could take care of themselves, or they might, throw up an alarm if they were approached by a stranger, but it would, for whatever reason, it would cause them some level of risk. So they stayed away from those people. And then what they found was a lot of what they used to pick their targets or, to stay away from someone was based solely on body language. So somebody that walks around with their head down, short, shuffling strides, not looking sure of where they're going or what they're doing. Those are the people they were like, okay, that person right there, I could totally, I could take that backpack, I could mug this person, take everything they got and get away with it scot-free. And then, the things that they saw in people that they stayed away from were someone who kept their head up. They weren't afraid to make eye contact. They looked like they would have raised an alarm. They could take care of themselves in a physical altercation. Those are the kind of things where they were like, all right, maybe not that guy, because there's so many soft targets out there. If you do the least little thing to make yourself, look less approachable from a predator standpoint, then, you just increased your survival chances. You just got yourself out of a situation that you didn't even really know you were in. So those things are very important. And that's why in the book, I'll walk you through the process of conducting that self-assessment so that you can identify the things in yourself that maybe need a little bit of a tweaks to make yourself look more of a hard target in the eyes of predatory criminals.
For sure. Paul,
Nice.
did you want to?
Well, there's so much. I was thinking about the book Sheep No More and when violence is the answer, and all this stuff is spinning in my head because you start putting these facets of things together because you have social violence and asocial violence, and the people that want to harm you, or the people that are posturing. And there's so many aspects of this that are dovetailing with what you're talking about. I had not heard of the book. I'm looking forward to reading the book. And I actually took my wife. I guess I'm going to settle on this one. I took my wife to kind of a shady mall. We parked up where we had great visibility. And I showed her because I was trying to help her to see the world. She lives in a bubble, as she likes to say. She lives in a bubble. And obviously opposites attract. So typically if you have a sheepdog heart, a lot of times the wife is trusting. It's just how that works. And so we were sitting there watching and I said, okay, look at this guy right here. He watches every woman walk out to her vehicle. And it's not like, oh, she's cute. And then he goes on, he watches her walk all the way to her vehicle and seems like he's studying the vehicle for a minute. And then he finds another one. I said, I don't like that. That tells me this guy, he's not just a bored dad or a bored husband that's waiting on his family to come out of the mall and girl watching. He's literally potentially building a target package. There was a lady that walked out of the mall with her head down. She had her hands full of packages. She had her phone in her ear. She couldn't see more than about 10 or 12 feet in front of her. And I said, she's a target for getting hit by a vehicle. She's a target for a mugging or an abduction. And I looked around for a moment and I said, that lady right there has her head up. She has her keys ready. She has her packages in one hand and she's making a beeline for her car. I said, a predator is not going to see her as an easy target. Her head is up and she's alert, and she looks like she could either handle herself or like you said, I didn't say sound the alarm, but make some noise, whatever. And the really spooky one was a lady pulled up, and my law enforcement buddies like to say it looks like the vehicle does methamphetamine. Like the vehicle was beat all to heck. It had suffered violence. A lot of these folks that are on these extreme drugs, preaching to the choir to you guys, but they beat up their own vehicles or they get in altercations with other people, and the vehicle suffers for the drug abuse. And this lady's hair was unbelievably disheveled, and it looked like she was targeting people, like she was looking for a soft target. And I'm like, babe, I love you. This is what I want you to be aware of, is the world is not necessarily this peachy keen little place. And I think the movie Taken, as much as I hate to give Liam Neeson any credit for anything, probably helped my wife and my two stepdaughters to realize maybe the world is not all a pleasant place to live. And so I love it when somebody brings something to the table that maybe I can use with my own team at my church or with my own family to help them be less of a target.
That's one of the things, I mentioned in the book. I get asked a lot of, in almost every circumstance, whether I'm doing a seminar or something like this, what's one thing I could do right now when I walk out the door that would help me be safer in terms of situational awareness? And my answer is always the same: pick your head up. Put your cell phone in your pocket, pick your head up, look like you know where you're going, take your earbuds out, right? Because if you're walking around with your cell phone, and I'm surprised at how many people you see doing that in New York, of all places. So, head in the cell phone, earbuds in, now you're cut off visually and auditorily from your environment. You have absolutely no connection to it, and you're instantly a soft target. So just the act of picking your head up based on the information we got from that Grayson and Stein study and just my personal experience, you are less likely to be approached by someone who has violent intent. And that's why, this 4-book series, in the back, there's a little logo, and it's called the Heads Up series, because, that's the one thing you can do to change everything about the way you're perceived. And perception is a big thing. Like, we perceive certain people as dangerous, but I worked for almost 6 years in a federal prison, and I can tell you some of the most dangerous people I met in my life did not look dangerous, right? They weren't big, giant, tattooed thugs that you would imagine, like from, if you watch Oz or whatever, they were just, they were just common looking dudes, kind of doughy, about 160 pounds. And it's just, but they were dangerous people because they didn't have that switch inside their head that allowed them to say, this is right, this is wrong. They just did what they wanted, and, so be it. And they didn't care how that impacted you or your family or your safety. But, they operate under the same rules as every other predator. And, they look for certain things, and certain things they target. And if you can learn what those are and how to counteract those, then you just increased your own personal safety exponentially.
I want to make a quick comment, and then I know James has got something and we got to close. But I lived this, and I think we were in Memphis. We were coming back out to the vehicle, and I have a philosophy that if I'm more than an hour from home, I'm in enemy territory. It changes several things about what I do. It's how I roll. And we were in Memphis years ago, and I head up on a swivel. My wife's got her hands full of stuff. She's talking, and right there next to me, and this guy starts paralleling us about 4 vehicles over, walking to our vehicle, and I can see him kind of sizing me up, and I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, I can hit you with what I've got on me from here. And he wasn't overtly threatening us, but there were cues, there were signs. And so as we're walking to the vehicle and she's loading stuff in the trunk, I turned to face him rather. And as I faced him, I made eye contact and I went like that. And it was the coolest thing I've ever gotten from a potential mugger or whatever he thought he was going to be. He pointed at me like, thank you, and turned about face and walked off. You can tell he was like, not a soft target. And I was thinking, first off, I don't want to ever kill somebody. Secondly, that's a lot of paperwork. Thirdly, I'm in an area that I'm not a known quantity. And I may carry insurance and what have you through US Law Shield, but I'd like to not have to make that phone call. And so I made eye contact with this guy like, I'm not your guy.
And sometimes that's all it takes.
It worked.
I thought I loved the and I wish we had more time to go over it, but we're definitely running out. But I loved the process versus the resource predator and that concept, because what's funny or what's interesting to me is I've been an NRA instructor for almost 15 years, and I've taught firearm classes and stuff like that. And one of the things that I try and do is in every class, I try and explain that to people. There's a difference between someone that's looking to, inflict violence, and a difference between that and someone that's just trying to get your laptop or your Xbox or something like that. And it was interesting because this was the first time I think I've ever read a book specifically that it addressed it that clearly. So I was like, I'm reading the book and I'm like, hey, that's awesome. That's exactly. So I'm not crazy when I say this. Well, I might be crazy, but.
And then, and that's the point, in my whole writing style is the clarity piece. Because, after a career in military and law enforcement, I've sat down, I've been in front of classes, and I've sat down as part of a class, and the way the material is presented makes or breaks, the experience for the student. And that's the way I approach these books. I wanted to be entertaining, but I wanted to be informative, and I wanted to be in plain language that everyone can understand. And like you mentioned, at the end of each chapter, there's a practical exercise. There's a list of key points, things that you need to remember about that chapter. And then there's a little section to kind of end it on a high note called Situational Awareness in Action. And it gives kind of a positive story, not just a horror story, because, I talk about in my second book how fear can cripple people. And you've got to learn not to use fear as a tool when you're teaching. So I want things to end on positive notes so that you can see how situational awareness can impact you in a positive way.
Copy that.
And so it's it's been a great experience. I never even fathomed that I would, end up being a writer or doing things like this with guys like you. But, it's been a great experience. I still got 2 books left. One's coming out in spring. The teen book is coming out spring of 2002. And then the travel book will be out in spring of 2024. And then that wraps up the Heads Up series.
Cool.
You're in good company with people who didn't think they'd be doing what they're doing.
Right?
This is true.
I think a majority of men feel that way. Like, what am I doing here? How did I end up here?
But for such a time as this, it says in the book of Esther, an uncle to his niece, who knows but that God put you here for such a time as this. And I'm paraphrasing. I think that when we have these conversations, and I was giving James a compliment, they're few and far between, but I was giving him a compliment the other day. And I said, these interviews make me a better person. They make me smarter. They make me more aware. They give me tools, and they make me hungry to go read people's books or to go take classes. And if nobody else gets anything out of it, that's horrible. But I guess I'm getting something cool out of these interviews, and it's making Paul a better person. So
we've got a long way to go with that road.
It's an uphill climb.
But things like this also help you to focus and sharpen your message, so that in a limited amount of time you can make the maximum amount of impact. So
sure, absolutely.
Well
we'll have to have you on again in the future, sir. And that way maybe you can help Paul a little bit more, improve his skills.
Yeah, we'll get him where he needs to be.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pick up the kids' book, honestly, because frankly, I have a 4 and a 6-year-old. So, 5 and 7 now. But the really perfect, I think, for that, because it's something I already eat, breathe, and sleep. But I appreciate the opportunity to look at something to help me take something I already kind of have internalized, but help kind of communicate that more effectively to the kids. Right. And I think that's great. So I look forward to that. But with that, unless you guys have something else, I'm going to pray us out.
No, go for it.
All right. Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity. Each and every week we get a chance to come before an audience and share knowledge and bring different folks and share that knowledge across the globe and in areas that need it. We know that you've blessed us with eyes to see and ears to hear and brains to think, and that is what tonight's topic has been all about. The ability to kind of just be aware. So let's use the gifts that we have. Let's use the senses that we have, and let's make sure that we are aware and we can be better prepared situationally, whether that's in our church or whether that's walking home from the mall or other situations in our daily life. We appreciate the opportunity again to share with other folks and help them learn and help create a better environment and a safer environment in your churches, Lord. And we ask you to bless the week ahead in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So as always, you're welcome to visit churchsafetyguys.com for more information and resources. Reach out to us if there's something we can help you with. And we're on all social media platforms. And then, of course, the church security app that you can download from the iOS or Google Play Store. But next week, we are actually going to be talking with Steve McGraw, I believe his name is, and he's with a mega church in, I believe, Arizona. So it'll be interesting getting some perspective on church security from a larger church standpoint. But in the meantime, feel free to shoot Gary a message. You can actually visit him through his website, which I posted in the links below, and definitely pick up a copy of his book and check it out, because it's worth the price of admission, at least for our broadcast tonight. So definitely check it out. But anyhow, thanks for joining us tonight, guys. Have a blessed week, and we'll talk to you next week. Take care.
Thank you for joining the Church Safety and Security broadcast with the Church Safety Guys, sponsored by Checkr. We hope that you found it informative, and we appreciate your feedback. Be sure to share our broadcast with your teams. Join the discussion online, and for other great resources, download the Church Security app or visit our website at churchsafetyguys.com. Remember, keep a servant's heart, a mindset of ministry, and Semper Disciplina. Always be training. Have a blessed week.